to make a motion to open the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, good evening. Welcome everyone who may be watching or listening remotely, and welcome to our guests and to members of the Climate Action Plan Committee meeting. Monday, November 27, 2023. I want to extend a special welcome to anybody who's joining remotely, also to the visitors here. Just want to sort of lay the ground rules for our committee. We are, I should say, this is an open meeting. We are rather formal with respect to our meeting, and the public is certainly welcome to attend, either virtually or in person. On some agendas, we have public comment tonight. Public comment was not on the agenda, and we do just want to emphasize that it really is important that the public who might be attending the meeting, either virtually or in person, they really need to be completely silent so that the members can conduct the meeting without distraction and interruption. So hopefully that will go smoothly tonight. I appreciate everybody's cooperation. So everybody should have the agenda with them, and I wanted to start off with obviously welcoming everybody, but also want to start off with number one on our agenda, which very excited to introduce our Stoughton High School Recycling Club representative. If you just want to introduce yourself, and I'll tell about how I connected with you.
My name is Brianna Moreno, and
I'm sorry, can you spell that last name for me?
Moreno, Moreno.
Gotcha.
Excellent. And I had, fortunately, it's Stoughton Day, which I would just say to everybody is actually a really great event for connecting people. I was able to meet some of the members of the Recycling Club and your advisor, who is Ms. Kelly, and have been in email contact with her since then. So I thought tonight would be a good time to share some information and share some ideas, both about Recycling Club and about what we're doing here with the Climate Action Plan Committee. And certainly say amongst our missions is actually to do a lot of community engagement and to talk with these issues and about specific proposals that will be coming up with the community. So why don't you tell us about Stoughton, the Stoughton High School Recycling Club and what it does?
So we just started last year, so it's a fairly new club at Stoughton High School, and I'd say it's more about like spreading awareness of what needs to be done, especially here at Stoughton. One issue that we do have in Stoughton High School, and I'm not sure if it's like any other town, but we don't actually like have any recycling bins. That's like, you know, it's kind of weird. But we do, but we do try to like spread awareness to recycling and our waste, because it's a lot. Like, so we're working on like fundraisers and trying to spread the word and trying to get more members, because it's a fairly small club as well. So that's what we're trying to do as of now. Hopefully we can gradually get more members, create more like actions throughout the school and hopefully like, throughout the town, and help you guys out with any community work.
That sounds exciting. That sounds good. So no recycling bins whatsoever in the high school, or they can be found but you have to go search for them?
Yeah, so like, because in the middle school we used to have like recycling bins located in each classroom.
Oh, okay.
And they would get collected.
Yeah.
But we only have trash bins, so it's kind of like, if you want to like recycle, you have to like go to like
Where the recycling bins are, which is like cafeteria and places like that. Okay.
Okay.
And how many people are in the club right now?
It varies, just because like there's some students that don't show up
Every time.
Sure. But I'd say around like 15, like around there.
Okay.
That's good.
And do you guys talk about other stuff besides recycling? Or are you really just focused on recycling?
Well, we're just like focused on like kind of our waste. So like not just like, oh, like let's go recycle. It's more of like be self-aware of how much waste we're actually producing.
Right, so it could be like food waste,
yes, food,
or
all of the above. So we're usually doing that and like just talking about how like what are some ways we could reduce some of that. And we usually just try to like spread awareness by putting up posters, spreading the word, posting it on our social medias or something like that. So.
And do you feel like there are things that you need at the school that you don't have other than more bins? Like, do you feel like you could use more educational materials, or do you feel like you need more resources, or is it really just focused on working with what you have, or do you think about like other ways that you could make a difference at your school, like by working with other groups?
Honestly, we kind of just like work with what we have. Like at our school, like they have like added some of like the water things where you can just like refill your own water bottle. So it's kind of like use less trash with that. But it's kind of like if we had like more like resources, I guess, and like more ways to like obtain ways to like not have as much waste. Yeah. But other than like recycling bins, like we do pretty good for the most part. But it's kind of like just like getting people to like actually do it. Yeah.
Ayesha, do you have any questions?
My first question would be, do you need help with the awareness campaign? Do you think there's anything that you could do, like a voice of the student board or something that you could have to like create like a campaign awareness in the school to help mitigate the message that you're trying to pass across to the students? Because you have a lot of students in Stoughton High School.
We do.
So how do you reach out to everybody? Yeah.
Honestly, like I feel like having a meeting like that, especially with like the Stuco, like the presidents and like stuff like that, would be a good way to like start, just so like they have like an idea of what we want to happen at Stoughton High, and then within that we can do like the class presidents of each grade talk to or like send a message out to like their grade in regards to like campaigns or like fundraisers or stuff we can do in order to like even just like let them know of like what we're trying to do, especially recycling club, because not many people know about the club. It's like I told you guys, it's like fairly new, so it's not very well known throughout the school. So if people were more like aware of that, that'd be so. Yeah, we could start off with like a Stuco meeting or something like that.
Okay. So in terms of resources, what do you think is the most essential, not necessarily the best, but a way that you can try to pass your message across? Like, do you think it's one-on-one? Do you think you can do a jingle? Do you think you could do like, how do you think you can
social
best?
media?
Yeah,
TikTok.
Honestly, our Instagram page for Stoughton High School is very active.
Okay.
So there's posts on there like fairly like whenever needs to be like news that needs to be spread. So if we like posted something on there on like the story or like a main post, I feel like that would catch like enough like attention from Stoughton High School, and not just like current members but like alumni that graduated.
Oh, nice.
Good idea. Good
And
idea.
how's the traffic like on your Instagram page? Like, how many people do you think you have there? What's the traffic like?
On the
1K, yeah. 2K.
in the high school? Like how many like followers?
Yeah,
or
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, I can pull it up for you.
Okay.
Sure. Let's do that.
Go right to the source.
Stoughton Public Schools, which is both like elementary, middle school, and high school, has just about 3,355 followers.
Wow.
That's huge.
Yeah.
So I'd say there's like a pretty good following, just because it's not just like current like students, but
Parents too, right? Probably.
yes.
So when you post things on there, it goes to all of those followers, right?
Yes.
So the recycling club puts things on the Stoughton school
We also do have
Instagram.
a recycling club Instagram,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not as like
Not as many followers.
yeah, not as known.
because it's new.
Yes.
Yeah.
So do you want to share that handle so that our listeners could, if they want to follow, or if they have someone who could follow, that way they will know what the page is.
So for the Stoughton Recycling Instagram, it's all lowercase STOUGHTON recycling.
All one word.
Yes, it's all together.
Okay.
And it's like it kind of shows of what we've done so far.
Oh, good.
It's not like we post every time, but it has like a couple posts.
So do you think that, I mean, knowing that you guys are new and that you've got a relatively small group, but hopefully growing,
Yes.
do you think kids at the high school have interest in learning about other ways that they can help the environment? Do you feel like the conversations are bigger than that, or that people would be interested in learning about other ways that they could help the environment?
I feel like it's like 50-50.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I'm gonna be like totally honest with you, if someone here is like, oh, you're part of like recycling club, they won't really like take you like seriously.
Right.
And like, it is what it is. But there's like some students that are willing to listen to what you have to say and like what other ways you can do to like not create as much waste or like help recycle or like just help the town of Stoughton.
Yeah.
But then there's the other half that are just like, that's like a joke.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
So.
Well, even reaching 50% of your audience isn't too bad, actually.
That's a good start.
Statistically, it could be, it's better than 1 out of 10 or something like that. Aisha, do you have other questions? I have a couple, and then obviously we'll see if Michael has some questions. I had a couple of questions. So, years ago when my children were at Stoughton High School, and I was on school committee, I thought there was a rule that nobody was allowed to have refillable water bottles. Are you allowed to bring like metal water bottles and get them filled up during the day so that you don't have to buy plastic bottles at lunch?
Yeah, so you can have most teachers actually, they hate if you have any like plastic one, or like one like those, but if it has a straw, like they want it to have like a cap over, which like many students bring their own cups, like that they can like refill and they like bring their drinks, so not as much plastic is being brought to the school. But if they have a like straw instead of one of the like twisty or like one that you can just like close, teachers hate that.
They don't like the straws.
They don't like the straws.
Because they're noisy or distracting?
And they're not plastics, like they're not like, oh, like throw it away, like,
Yeah.
it's not gonna recycle. But
Right.
like they don't like, because spill
They want the
wise,
closable
Oh, okay,
containers.
sure. Okay.
so like most students have like the straw ones, and then like there was like, like not like the plastic straws. I keep saying
I know what
straw.
you mean.
No,
Okay.
they're plastic, but not like straws.
Yes.
They're the things that stick out of certain cups.
Yes,
that-
so
yeah.
they bring like those. They're like, oh, put those away, or like you can't bring that into my classroom. So then
Right,
when
because they're like an open container.
yeah, so when they're being told that, then they just like bring a water bottle instead. Which
Like
is
a
not-
plastic water
yes,
bottle.
which is not like helpful.
No.
But like it all depends about like the teacher as well.
Yeah.
So there's
So
no,
the
like,
teachers are setting the rules, not the high school principal?
no, well you can bring like whatever you want, honestly, like if as long as like school appropriate and like stuff like that. But like in the classroom, depending where you are, especially like in the science classrooms, they're like, oh, you can't have that in my class, like it can spill, like something can go in it, like
Gotcha.
yeah.
Okay. So what about composting? So, and there's been discussions going back a year and a half with the schools about, there's food waste, obviously,
Yes.
and people are throwing it in the trash, or are there composting bins at the cafeteria?
In the trash.
Okay, so we've made zero progress on composting.
But I've not seen any compost thing at the school whatsoever.
Do you think people would use it if they were there?
if they were
Somewhat,
like
right?
if they were like there, like in the cafeteria.
Like if you had trash, recycling, compost, do you think people would
if
put
they were taught like what to compost as well.
Yeah,
Just because some people don't know what needs to be put into each bin as well.
excellent point.
But I feel like if you had your options, people would do what they need to do. Like versus like plastic here, like waste here, like. But we only from what I've seen, there's no compost bins or anything like that, especially in the cafeteria.
Just so you know, there are many schools across Massachusetts that have the composting in the cafeteria.
Well, I have heard about the zero waste plan for Massachusetts. So is that like not really quite sure if that's gonna like with Stoughton, like what are we gonna do? For,
Well, I mean that's what we're trying to figure out, right? Like if there were a way that we could figure out how to make things available like that, if we make them available and kids would use them, then that might be a great solution.
Michael, questions? You're just gonna take notes?
Yeah, it's certainly not your responsibility to have done this or anything, but I'm surprised at the lack of bins in classrooms, and I'm just wondering if that is are you aware of any discussions anybody's had about that? About possibly putting them in there?
I mean, there are like students and teachers that have like mentioned, like from like what I've heard, like one-on-one or like just through a conversation, how it's kind of weird how we don't have recycling bins. Just because like we were used to that in middle school, they were everywhere, but in the high school, like you don't really see any. And like there are teachers who are like, oh, I wish, because you just have to like throw this paper away. Like, oh, I wish I could just recycle this, but you really can't.
So to buttress your point, if you do have those recycling bins, you know for sure that people are going to use it.
Yes.
Gotcha.
It's a very
Excellent.
interesting point. That the middle school would have it, but the high school wouldn't,
Yeah.
because it's all part of the same school
Yes.
system. No, it's
Yes,
really interesting.
very informative. Very
Yes.
informative.
Great.
To what extent does your recycling club just sort of talk about climate change in general? Or again, are they just focused on the issues that you've already talked about?
We've talked like statistically of like throughout the years since like I was away for a while this school year, so I just like got back not too long ago. So I'm not really sure what they talked about during while I was gone, but we've talked like statistically of like how global warming is like real. Like there's people that don't believe in like such thing. They're like, oh, like you're lying, like that can't happen. But like we've talked about global warming, about how much trash Americans are producing like a year and like stuff like that. And how like compost or recycling stuff isn't like available to everyone. So that's mainly what we've talked about so far. Hopefully we can expand our like knowledge and we're able to spread what we know to the rest of the school.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yes, no, we are gonna keep talking as
Yeah,
long as we
no,
need.
this is
You're
really
our
great
top visitor
information.
today, so we're
So-
very excited to be able to talk to you.
Do you think that most kids in the high school think that climate change is real? You think that they do recognize that there's a problem?
I feel like it depends who you're talking to. Because some might be like, that's like, you're lying, like that's not true. But then others will be like, yeah, I understand like what's going on in the world and how it is true. So it really depends on the type of person you're talking to.
Sure.
So,
And has it been discussed in your science classes? Is it a topic that comes up in science?
well, I'm taking forensics, so not really.
Not in forensics, yeah.
So
Although
not
very cool
really.
topic, yeah.
But I feel like it would.
What about in middle school? So my kids are in middle school, and I feel like it might come up just because it's earlier and you're not as specialized. But
Yeah, maybe throughout like I remember in middle school in like history class they would like slightly go over it.
all right, that's interesting.
So
History
I
class.
do have a follow-up question.
Yes.
What do you think would be the best way that, as a climate action planning committee, is there anything we can do to help the recycling club influence the way that the clarity of this communication is being passed across to the students? Because you said that when you talk to people, they feel like you're lying. So I don't think that they're very clear about what the scope of global warming is and how that it affects our climate. How do you think that we can influence the way we communicate this to people, especially as a recycling club?
Well, I'm just gonna say, like, people really won't probably listen to, like, us, especially since we're, like, young. But, like, if you guys, like, reached out and, like, maybe, like, sent, like, an email or just, like, something that they can read over saying how, like, this is an actual issue and, like, people need to be, like, aware of, like, what's going on and how they can help and stuff like that, then I feel like people would listen to that, especially since you guys are adults and you guys know more than us. Like, I feel like if you, like, reached out like that, it would, like, open minds. But if it's, like, us, people are gonna be like, oh, well, you're my age, why would I listen to you, you know?
So you're saying that your influence, your scope of influence is limited because of the age brackets that you are?
Yeah, some people might not take me seriously.
Okay, gotcha.
And, like, I mean, I respect that, you know? Like, I'm not gonna tell you otherwise, but I feel like if it's coming from, like, an adult, then they'd, like, actually listen to what's going on.
So let me put a follow-up question. So how do you see the high school, we have an age range?
Yes.
What do you think is the best form to learn and to adapt to, like, because I put it down here, to learn and improve on what they're learning, especially when it has to do with climate change and then recycling. What do you think is the best method we could use? So let me give an instance.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm talking to toddlers, I definitely have to put something in a cartoon-like situation that they will
Talking a
pick
little,
up.
like, yeah.
That
toddlers.
will pick up their fancy, and they definitely might not want to listen to the message, but they want to watch the cartoon. And in the process of watching the cartoon, they get the message. What do you think is the best format we could use to pass this message across to? Do you think it could come
Right,
like
a video
in a way of a
or
video or a song,
in
a short
person?
play?
Probably, like, a video.
Okay.
Because it's, like, straightforward, like, people don't really have to, like, even just, like, listening to it,
Mm-hmm.
then, like, actually, like, reading something, that would probably work best.
And you feel like a representative of someone that is above the teenage age will be a best person to be able to pass that message across?
Yes, like, with the help, honestly, like, us, like, helping each other would probably be best, just because, like, you have the knowledge, like, and, like, the voice, but we can, like, maybe,
Relate.
like, try to, like, really push
Okay, so let me give you another example.
Yes.
Let me make this straight. Like, okay, high school, we have a lot of people who are music lovers. What if we have someone who's give, for example, like a celebrity like Brandy, says a message, hey, Stoughton High School, we're bringing you this message courtesy of climate action, and this is the message. Do you think, like, once they hear that voice or they know that this is someone from this class, or do you think, like, okay, if it's a celebrity from maybe a major football league, someone like a Giannis, a Tentacule that plays in Celtic, do you think that would really easily catch your attention and people will be like, it's gonna have like 6,000 views in 2 seconds?
Like, who are the high school kids gonna listen to? Who's gonna catch their attention, and who's gonna be able to deliver a message that they actually want to listen to? It's probably not me necessarily.
That's true.
Wait, we just met.
Yeah, because if it's, like, someone from school, like an administrator, like, we already have, like, when we get called to, like, auditorium and people,
Speakers,
yes,
and things
like, people like that. Like, I guess, like, when it's, like, someone from the school, so, like, oh my, they're talking again, like, these people.
Right.
But, like, if it's, like, someone, like, they don't know, I feel like they want to, like,
focus?
yeah, they want to, like, focus a little more.
Yeah.
But, like, it also can't be, like, when, like, if we bring this, like, subject up, we need to like grab their attention immediately. If not, we're just gonna lose them and they're
Yep.
just gonna get on their phones. So, in like the way you said, like we can like a video or something, just so like even if they're not watching, they can listen to what's like being like said.
Well, just sort of jumping in there. So last April, the Sustainability Committee, which is a different committee, had a presentation at the library, which our friends at SMAC recorded, which had a speaker from Mass Audubon and a professor from UMass Boston who specializes in environmental science of some form or nature, talking about climate change and what you can do about climate change. But the Mass Audubon person who really focused on the actual observable existence of global warming and climate change. And it'll like get you in your heart when they talk about the little frogs that start to get born and then they freeze to death
Yeah.
because the weather patterns are so not the way
yeah.
they're supposed to be and so cyclical. But in any event, she did a great job of laying it out, and also sort of some of the lingo which I picked up in the last year or so about net zero and this and that, and it is its own field of study, even in a non-scientific way.
Mm-hmm.
But I might send it to you just for you to look at or sort of like listen to while you're doing other things. It goes on, maybe if you include the second speaker, maybe an hour and a half. We also had a performer there who did some music as well. But I mean, I'm be curious to see how attention holding you and the members of the recycling club think that is, because that was like, it's a very, Mass Audubon, it's all about biodiversity and sustainability issues, but like, very well-informed person who specialized in this and could really kind of lay it out on the line as to what's happening, what we're facing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I will send you that link. My second question I want to ask you is, did your teacher send you, our committee has created a climate action survey for the town. Did your teacher, Ms. Kelly, forward that?
I believe she did.
Forward that to
It
you?
was like I think it was like a Google form or something like that.
It was a
Yeah,
Survey
it's like a
Monkey?
Survey
Very
Monkey.
easy and quick. Did you?
It was like 5 or
maybe
8
five questions.
Yes, quick. Did you?
I did do it.
Do,
Oh,
you, do you
good.
feel like other students, maybe even students outside your recycling club, filled it out?
I'm not sure. I know it was sent through me because of Miss Kelly.
Okay.
But I'm not really sure if like other students not part of the recycling club has received it.
Okay.
But that's just because I didn't like ask
Right.
if like anybody else like Scott sent the survey.
Right.
But me as a part of like the recycling club, I did.
Okay. Thank you. And we also sent it to Mr. Beaulieu, who does environmental science. So hopefully,
yes.
just to forward to his students as well. Anyways, quite frankly, we'd like the whole high school and everybody in the town to take a look at it and give us some feedback.
We do have a drama presentation coming up in the high school. I do happen to know about that. It's
Okay.
the high school musical. And in between those presentations, they have interludes.
They do.
Usually those halls are filled up to the brim. I know that because my son is there and he's participating in this high school musical.
At Stoughton High?
Yes, it's coming
That's
up in
cool.
Stoughton High, just like they did
You
Legally
just had
Blonde.
one last weekend.
Yeah, they had Legally Blonde. My daughter was in that cast, and they're gonna have High School Musical. Do you think like in
That's in the middle school,
such-
high school, middle
it's,
school, the middle school one.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Do you
okay.
think like such forum could be like a good forum, like during the interlude when the cast are done and they have like a 5-10 minutes, someone could literally just say something because we have them right there in the
That's
hall.
true.
What do you think?
People are already right there.
Right there, and we know like every one person in that hall at that time is from Stoughton.
That's fair.
That's a great way to get our message out
Yeah.
and to get the survey filled out too, and to just promote what we're doing, and get some whatever.
Yeah.
So we should
Put
put
the
that on
QR
the.
code up and
Yeah, because like I said during recycling club, we like put out some flyers and stuff like that. So if we can like do like the QR code on like one of the like papers and people can just like fill them out as they're passing through, by like try to put them like where like the main entrance is, like the like mainly populated places that's throughout the high school, to see if they can like catch some eyes and more people can fill out the survey.
and is your club interested? And again, obviously, I think we're gonna have continued conversations with your club, but as your club, again, we would like to help you achieve what you want to achieve at the high school and in the schools generally, and we would like to, shall we say, to provide opportunities for you to, help with the bigger picture, which is, the work of the Climate Action Plan Committee, which might include such things as just, being aware of any school event. So like, you have the spring fairs in the elementary schools that we could
or the
be.
Christmas fair, or the holiday fair.
Right,
all
that we
these
could be a
different-
presence at.
Yeah.
And not just collect the survey, but again.
Have like little stand and like
Yeah,
talk.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and have, little flyers about composting, or flyers about this, or flyers about, action you can take, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, I think that would be terrific if we could, try to engage back and forth. And certainly, I would say, these meetings are always open, but, there might come a time where, we wanna put your club on the agenda again, and have just like a real dialogue as to what's going on, and about, how we can support you, and how, we have opportunities here, obviously, for getting the message out. And I think, the big message is, if you want to bring about change in your community, it's all about the students and their families, because families by their very nature get engaged in their community, where somebody who just lives here and maybe doesn't have kids or whatever it may be, maybe just, the bedroom community and their life is in Boston, whatever it may be. Once you have children in the school system, you make connections, and you can become very deeply engaged in your community. So I think us connecting with you, and the activists and your high school would be, and your teachers too, of course, would be really productive and helpful to us both.
Can I just make one other
Again, we're
offer?
absolutely.
So you had mentioned that you're in the journalism club, or do you think that your readers would be interested in hearing more about what we're doing, or having an interview with people on the panel, and it could be what we're doing or what we're not doing, or it could be questions about that might raise awareness amongst people in the school, or
Yeah, because I feel like the people who are reading are like the most like engaged in what's actually going on in Stoughton or at Stoughton High School. So I mean, they would. I don't even know. They would be. I'd say they'd probably be more willing than just like.
and it could even be something about what the high school kids are concerned about,
Yes.
rather than what we're doing, but more about what are kids thinking about in terms of the environment. And that might be a really interesting topic, because we could think about what they're worrying about, and then how that kind of matches up to some of the things that we're thinking about doing, as a nice connection between the two groups.
And see how we can work together.
Yeah.
And just so I understand, so is there a high school newspaper that gets published?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, okay. Like a weekly online newspaper, or how does that work?
I'm not really. I think it is online.
Okay,
On the Stoughton website.
okay,
On the high school website?
Yes.
Yeah.
okay.
And this is open to the public?
I'd assume so.
Okay.
I can
Look it up
verify.
right
Yeah,
now.
I can verify.
Well, that's very cool.
So I'm curious, actually, what drew you to the recycling club as an activity?
I just wanted to have more hobbies, and I wanted to be a part of something. And I saw the page going on Instagram, and that's how I was like, this might be something I actually want to do. Just because I saw people interacting, making posters that were visually eye-catching to me. And in the hallway we have this I think it's B3, on the third floor. We have this hallway that's all about recycling. So it's join this Google Classroom. We meet on these days, and that's when I had already seen the Instagram So when I like finally like passed by and I like really like looked at it, I'm like, I'll go today, and that's how I like started.
Awesome.
So good recruitment, good messaging, it sounds like, sort
Yeah.
of, and that's what you all need for a cause. It's like you need to have good messaging and you need to be able to bring people in a way. And I certainly think it would be interesting to pursue people who are, whether they're concentrate their studies in art or whatever. Should we have programs or events, it would be great to have posters from talented high school artists. Again, that I think can make a great statement in and of themselves. Like a piece of art can make a statement that you can't quite even make with words, and certainly can interest people in the topic, and can and quite frankly, there's a lot of art, if you go to museums, a lot amazing artwork that is all based on climate change.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just pictures, but I mean it's
Right.
like amazing conceptual artwork that people are trying to articulate climate change, like here's where the sea level is going to be in New York City in 2040.
Yeah.
Whatever it may be. So,
Really, yeah.
but I think there's an artistic component to a message and to a cause as well.
Yeah.
Do you have any other questions for us? And I want to say would love to have you. Actually, I want to make one more point before I go on, because something coming. We also note, and again, we hope to speak with the administration and everything, but we also note that, some schools, school districts adopt sort of, I would call it like a resolution or a statement, about sustainability and climate change. And that might be something that we might be in discussion with with the school committee or the administration about. And it might be something that if we are in those discussions, it would be great to have the recycling people, club people, speak up about how, they want their school district to be on the right side of this issue, or I should say to be, promoting awareness and promoting, action on these issues.
Any other questions for us?
Yeah, I do have just a couple questions.
Yeah, fire away.
So, how long have you guys been part of the climate change committee? As if we want to go
Ask this
around.
question to you earlier.
Exactly. I think that the committee members were appointed formally by the select board on June 20th of 2023.
About 5 months ago, 6 months,
Yes.
5 months ago.
So it was following town meeting adopted an article
To form the committee.
Yes, to form a climate action plan committee, and that town meeting was various days in May 2023. So after town meeting adopted the article that we will form a climate action plan committee, it went through the select board to make the actual appointments, which we believe was on June 20th.
And what are some plans that you do have for Stoughton regarding climate change? And
Oh, why are you looking at me?
I can answer.
So the goal of this committee is to come up with what we think are going to be the most meaningful and actionable recommendations to the town of things that we think can have the biggest impact, but also be things that we can actually do. So we've only been working together for about 6 months. And in that time, we've been looking at kind of what the state of our town is right now, what things have been done in the past, and what some of the ideas that other towns have proposed and actually put into place. So some of the categories that we're looking into, and none of these are formal recommendations, but the things that we're thinking about are things like composting, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and there are a bunch of different ways that you can think about doing that. Things like charging stations, thinking about other solutions that we could do to promote other environmental health, like pollinator gardens, or also thinking about how do we plan for potential environmental, I don't want to say disasters, but the impact of environmental change, which could be severe weather fluctuations. It could be things like, I don't know, more mosquitoes, all of these. So we have a number of different categories that we're thinking about and trying to think about within those categories. What are the things that we can do that will have the greatest impact, that are also going to be in line with how our town thinks and functions and, is actually within our means, but still looking also to kind of push the envelope towards greater change.
So after you've hopefully implemented these plans, hopefully in the near future, so you said like the outcomes that you're looking forward to are?
So our goal is to actually come up with the plan, and then it's up to the town and through the town which things will actually be implemented. So it's not our job to implement them, but it's our job to come up with the recommendations and the means through which those things can get done. So it's really a partnership between our committee and the town and other groups like town officials and the schools and others to really come up with something that's going to work for everybody, but trying to push towards greater awareness and change, just like you're trying to do through the recycling program.
And hopefully, like after all of that, would that be like a long-term type thing?
Yeah, really good question.
Yeah,
I think there's
absolutely.
going to be some short, mid, and long-term goals. So I think short-term goal would be coming up with a plan. Mid-term would be how do we implement that plan, and long-term would be what the results of that plan being put in place would be. And I think each of those categories we talked about, so like having an impact on greenhouse gas emissions versus some of the other things, they may have different timelines, and that's where we need to be really specific for each of those categories, because some of them might be near-term wins. If it was, how do we use solar panels more in this town versus how do we reduce greenhouse gas emissions, they may have very different timelines. The goal would be to chart out what those different timelines would be, so we're not kind of bucketing everything as an all or nothing. It's how do we start to make incremental changes to actually impact things overall. Does that help?
Yes. And sorry,
No,
I have
great
some
questions. They're really good questions.
Like, what is your guys' opinion on like the help that you guys are receiving from like the community involving climate change? Like, do you think that there's more that we as residents, students, all that we can do to help?
I
Go ahead.
I could go ahead to say that because I have neighbors on my street. I live here in Stoughton. Like, we all live in Stoughton. We see what is happening within the community. And we know that we have seen some changes, definite changes. It was not like it was before. So some people do have sincere, genuine concern. But our goal, like she said, is not to implement this change, but to see and make recommendations on how these changes can meaningfully impact us and cause a positive change towards making the environment more conducive, more friendly, and more easy for us to live in. For instance, we did have a time where we came out and we saw everywhere was foggy. Now we were told that was as a result of the bush burning that was coming all the way from Canada.
Or wherever,
Yeah, but then again, was it affecting us while we were living here? Yes, it was. How do we make that change? How do we ensure that when these things come to us, how prepared are we to be able to combat this? What do we do? What's the plan to mitigate these changes when they come? And then, for instance, we did have a flood alert warning that did come. Again, we knew that Massachusetts as a whole We have a shortage and a deficit of some dams that are not working properly. And that again, it's a huge concern. Can we implement this change as a community alone? No. And that's where we come in, where we partner. We partner with other towns like Canton, Easton, and people like you and I. Don't throw trash on the floor. Don't throw it in the drain. Do the recycling thing like we ought to do. Again, these are some of the questions that we have. They're genuine, and we've seen them. This summer was kind of like a wet summer. We've never really had a wet summer like this before.
That's true.
So some of these we can't deny.
Yes.
The signs are there. We do not want to force what we believe in people. It's not a belief, it's what the environment is telling us. For instance, if I get bitten by a mosquito, I'm going to have a red rash that shows like a sign that I was bitten by something.
Mm-hmm.
But no matter how I try to deny the fact that, no, I wasn't bitten, the red rash is right there.
Yeah.
So we know that the environment is crying out for help.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we come in to try to see how we can mitigate, recommend, and see how the town of Stoughton will implement these changes.
And maybe
Yeah,
Bonnie, you can
That was
mention the
beautifully put.
results of the survey too, because
Oh.
that's direct feedback or some of what we're seeing.
Yeah, and I just wanted to comment because you asked about the community, and clearly this is about, working with town meeting reps, working with town officials, town committees, and town employees, and the select board. Ultimately, to have a meaningful, successful climate action plan, we need community participation as a community as well. Because most of the greenhouse gas emissions in the town come from people, not from the town buildings or the town cars, they come from everybody else, right? We all live in we all live in a home or an apartment, and we all, use different methods of transportation. So we definitely want to engage, raise awareness with the entire community as well. And I actually like how Aisha had connected, climate change and what we're seeing and what's going on and risks of, flooding and clogged drains. That connects directly with recycling, quite frankly. If people are recycling everything, and I can tell you, you take a walk around the town, there's trash, mostly water bottles, all over the place, and other types of, trash or trash bags or whatever, clogging drains. Well, if people understand about waste and recycling, that's going to help the situation when there is heavy rains, right, and there is potential flooding. So it all connects.
That's a great point, and actually maybe something, to think about with around the schools, because if there are kids leaving the schools and chucking their water bottles, and it is something that does clog the drains, and that does then have a ripple effect on flooding, for example, which is a very real thing. Do you think that there are things that we can do in the schools to help raise awareness on, it may not seem like a big thing to chuck one bottle, but
But it's when it's like multiple. That's
Yeah.
well, when exactly. When you've got 1,200 kids thinking, oh, one bottle doesn't matter, but then you end up with flooding that actually impacts large parts of the community. Do you think that that's something that kids would be open to learning more about and understanding the impact of their actions, not just their actions, but people's actions on very real impacts like flooding?
I'd say yeah. People have to be more self-aware of what their own action and other people's actions are doing to the environment.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's gonna sound like people are not gonna want to hear it because nobody wants to be blamed for anything.
Of course not.
Nobody wants to
It's
think
a really
it's their
important
fault.
point.
But it's like you gotta know that what you're doing is like not right, and that there are consequences eventually.
Yep.
And it's coming.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Oh, that's great.
Absolutely. Other journalistic questions for us?
I think that's all I have for today. But do you guys have anything else you'd like to add regarding anything?
So does your club have a president or officers, or is it a little bit more casual about?
It's more casual.
Okay.
Like we don't appoint someone to have like a higher everyone's just like there for like the same purpose.
Alrighty.
We do have Kayla and Emily who they couldn't be here today. Hopefully we can be at the next meeting together, so we have
That'd
more
be great.
voices. Yes, but that's like pretty much it. It's not like one person has a higher purpose than everyone else.
So there's no hierarchy. It's just like we're just coming together to serve the
Yeah.
That's great.
the greater good of humanity.
That's great.
That's great.
We've learned a lot, actually.
We've learned a ton. This was really good. And also, if there are things that we can do to come and help your committee either understand things better, understand what we're doing better, and if you think of other things that we can be doing, let us know.
Sounds good.
Absolutely.
I'll shoot you guys an email or something.
Yeah.
But hopefully we can talk again, just like see what's going on.
Definitely, we'll keep the dialogue going, and I will say that part of our plan in the winter is to have some type of community open meeting, and we certainly would invite you, but also like in the sort of longer run,
Yes.
which means in the next few months. The question is whether you would want to have like a student-led community forum, which focuses on students, but we could assist with that or participate in that in some way. So it's more like, not like students coming and listening to us, but students maybe coming and listening to you with sort of like a back and forth engagement. Part of it just like figure out what are people thinking about, what are people's understanding, what are students understanding, because I think students will influence their families, and just like families influence their students. So when students bring home new information and say, oh, I heard about composting today, and actually our ancestors used to do that because that's what everybody used to do as a farmer. It's like you would take your food scraps and you'd mix it into compost, or it's great for the garden, or it's great for the lawn, or whatever it is. And then you share new ideas with your family.
Yeah, I mean that's something I'm willing to do. I would definitely. I'll talk to like the rest of them and see if we can get like a meeting with like the actual like student presidents and stuff like that, just so like they're aware as well, and they can reach out to their own like grade if that's even helpful.
That's smart.
But I'll bring up the idea to the rest of the recycling club and Miss Kelly as well.
That's great. So we will stay in touch, and we have some other exciting things on our agenda. If we're ready to move on, and you're welcome to certainly listen to it and see what's going on and what we're working on. You could maybe add it to your article or whatever. So if we're ready to move on, I think we had review of minutes next.
And just really quick.
Yes.
Thank you again.
Oh my gosh!
course.
Thank you for giving us your time.
Super engaged,
Yes,
and
yes.
Thank you for
you're a
having
great
me.
leader for your
Great
school.
spokesperson.
The fact
Absolutely.
that you're even doing this and representing, it's amazing,
Yes.
and I'm super impressed.
Thank
So
you.
thank
Absolutely.
We
you.
expect to see you again.
Yeah, we hope so.
Yeah.
Certainly.
We're gonna recruit you for
I
the
was
committee.
like nervous. I was like, oh my.
Don't be nervous. No, this
You
is
did
all
great.
about learning from one another, and you've done a fantastic
Right.
job.
Thank you.
So
Right,
really
right.
appreciate
It's been a pleasure,
it.
total pleasure. All right, so turning next on our agenda, item number 3 is review of minutes. And first of all, I want to commend Michael. This was probably the hardest minutes that you had to do so far. You must have rewatched the tape because it's extremely detailed. We had Kathy Stanley, who is the town energy manager, report on her activities and the plans and what she's doing and what's underway, and it was very detailed. So I have, I just had one maybe spelling. Anybody have any comments on the minutes?
No.
All right.
Thank you.
And I wasn't present.
Oh,
in the
you weren't
meeting,
present,
so
so-
I can't comment,
Um,
but they were great
They were
minutes.
great.
Yes.
They were great minutes. So I, under the MAPC, I just, Michael, it's nice, so a Kleinfelder's.
Oh, I wanted to look that
Yeah.
up and I didn't climb.
I happen to have the gentleman's card, so
Okay, yeah.
KLEINFELDER.
Gotcha. And what page is that?
So that was under MAPC Climate
Is there a
Leaders
page- did I put page
Certification.
numbers on this
Oh,
one?
I'm sorry, it is page 3.
Okay,
I
page-
didn't see the page
No
numbers are at the
problem.
bottom. Top of page 3, Kleinfelder. Other than that, I think it looks good. So, anybody want to make a motion to adopt the minutes as amended?
I'm abstaining, so
Okay.
please
So
go
I
ahead.
will make a motion to adopt the
Okay,
meeting.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, so looks like it's adopted as amended. Next on our list, and we are short, unfortunately, a couple of people tonight, so I think this will be on the agenda again, but I just wanted to touch base about my thoughts, obviously, and our thoughts about the interim recommendations proposals, which we've been back and forth on a little bit. And I went back to the prior minutes just to see what ideas people had put in there. Mm-hmm. And I feel like we're circling in on the point where perhaps I will prepare something in writing to bring to the next meeting and maybe have it for discussion. So I think what we have too are kind of like, for the most part, like bullet points, but they remain to be fleshed out. And it's okay maybe to have bullet points because we do want to talk more with town officials and then have some community engagement in January and February and say. But the other issue, as I'm going to go through the bullet points. The other issue, to go back to Laura's suggestion, as I recall, was we are an advisory committee, set up by town meeting and certainly advisory to town officials and the select board. But I think to be an actual successful plan, it's also about community engagement, community learning, and doing things. So, and Laura had mentioned balance. So I guess that we need to maybe fine tune about, so the balance being not just the town officials and the town buildings are going to do X, Y, and Z, but also we'll engage and people in town will also themselves want to do X, Y, and Z because most of the greenhouse gas emissions are not the town buildings, it's the other 20,000 people who live in the town. Anyway, so these are the things that I came up with, which is a higher sustainability coordinator, which again would be fiscal year, whatever in the future. But that would be because that's like a long-term position in the town who would be chasing grant money, following the plan, trying to push things along with the plan and be on the same page, etc. Installing EV charging stations, I think there's a lot of support for that because you can't promote even town employees, quite frankly, owning electric vehicles if they can't come to work and charge them. And then developing, related to that, a EV vehicle fleet policy, and the policy, isn't not necessarily saying on X date every car is going to get replaced, but just having a policy and a plan going forward. The energy efficiency and then electrification of buildings, which is obviously what Kathy Stanley's working on now, but that is perhaps a slow plan over time. Education and outreach, so that I definitely think goes to that, the balanced approach, so that people are aware of what they can do to help with that. Crisis management, which I think is important, and the more I think about it, and I read a lot about this, it's maybe not just one person. I think it's like multiple different types of plans. So what's your plan if there's a really major heat wave, and challenges to the electric grid during that heat wave, and people you really have to worry about, do they have air conditioning? Can they get to another place? Who's looking out for them? There's the flooding, which, again, the town is paying some attention to that as far as, I think, there's a municipal vulnerability preparedness program that they're involved in, so they certainly have pinpointed those issues, and it's the catch basins and everything. And I was actually at a meeting with the Neponset Valley Watershed Association, had a community meeting about that, and one of the things they were saying is it's not necessarily that you're in a floodplain. Like there's other ways you can get flooded because of the water tables. Like it's not like, oh, I'm low line, I'm high line. Obviously, It's worse to be in a floodplain, or it's worse to be across the street from a river. But that there could be a major flooding, raining event, and in unexpected ways there can be flooding. So the anti-idling, which is something which the Sustainability Committee is going to proceed to discuss, there was a toolkit for how to try to implement that, actually specifically at the schools. There is a state law, just so you know, about you're not supposed to be idling for more than 5 minutes, and perhaps idling for more than a couple minutes is unfortunate. It's a law that's been observed to be widely violated at the schools. And so let's call it our sister committee, the Sustainability Committee, is going to start a discussion about promoting, shall we say, following the law, and people who, come early to pick up their kids, just, turn off your car, actually, because, and everybody's breathing that in, it's just really not healthy. You've got, 8-year-olds coming out, and then, there's 30 cars who've been idling for 15 minutes, so it's a fog. Okay. Composting and solar panels. So those are the things. Probably makes sense to put them all together in something that we look at next meeting, just to see whether that's a complete and maybe perhaps overly complete. Maybe we want to winnow it down. We need to have a robust discussion about that, and hopefully there will be more people there. So any thoughts about interim recommendations? Laura, Aisha, Michael?
I think you missed out the Lawrence Public Health.
The public health.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what would a public health interim recommendation be, other than, I don't know, maybe it's a subset of crisis management, but.
It might be a subset of crisis management, actually.
Okay.
I need to think about that, though.
Okay.
Because sometimes you just see some stuff that you're not supposed to see, like outside on, you know what I mean? It's really gross, like someone will just defecate in some places.
Oh.
Yep. It is, it's a big deal.
I was thinking about some of the insect-borne diseases, some of the health effects associated with heat or cold, things like that, right? So there's an element of that I do think is crisis management, but there may be an element of that that's further upstream, more about prevention rather than managing the actual crisis. So we need to put a little bit of thought into that, but I think it's both.
What about public bathrooms? Some public bathrooms you can't just use.
So I'm not sure that that's a climate related thing.
Okay.
But we could discuss that as a broader kind of.
Gotcha.
But those are the kinds of things that I was thinking about when we were talking about public health. So I do think there's the management piece of how did we get here and how do we deal with people that have acute heat stroke but I do think that there's a prevention piece of that too. I see.
I definitely have one lawn that is never mowed, never taken care of. It's just out there. It's just it's the perfect spot for mosquitoes to breed and for you to have this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
All right. So and the other thought is, I don't know if this would be something that would be built into interim recommendations, is if you look at climate action plans, it's all about when and how do you reach net zero. Most of them, and I believe the state one, is aiming for net zero by 2050, which most people would say is too late. But in any event, that's what there's one or more climate action plans that are 2030, which clearly for us for our town is too late, because we're going to be 2024, 2025 before we're hopefully stepping up the activity. I don't know whether we want to say our goal is the 2050, whether we want to aim for a shorter goal. I mean, or you could say this is our goal and this is our strategy to get here. However, to the extent there's funding available, to the extent there's whatever available, we would urge the town to try to do it by 2040 or something, whatever it may be. So that's just something to think about, but that is sort of the overarching something which I think we should speak to with once we're talking about interim recommendations. To what end, that's the net zero goal, and of course the goal is to be prepared for the changes that are in force and coming our way. Yeah. One way or the other. So that's a thought that I was having.
I think 2050 sounds so far away that it starts to diffuse the actual action part of things. I'm curious what other people think. That saying something could happen or will happen by 2050, that gives us plenty of time. But I feel like by then people are like, not my problem, because I'm probably not going to be alive, or, you know, I might not live here anymore. Like, I just wonder if breaking it into phases.
Oh, I think you're definitely breaking it into phases, but I think again, I think if you look at the state's plan or plans, they're definitely breaking it into phases to get there. Like, you have to take action. Like, you know, this 5 years you're here, this 5 years you've done this 5 years you've done that. You know, 2030 is clearly too ambitious for our town getting started, but it doesn't mean that you don't have benchmarks.
And you're talking specifically about
Massachusetts.
net zero emissions?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So, but again, I think there's
But that's where I feel like we need to have data behind that.
exactly. So if we're ready to move on
If
to
that's,
the next,
if that's a good segue.
yeah,
to
that's
the
a very
next
good
topic,
segue.
then-
All right. So the bottom line is, and I know that James was here early on, perhaps in August, saying we need to hire a consultant, we need to get an engineering consultant, and my instinct was, well, let's put the brakes on this. We're talking to the grant agencies, so I need to have a more in-depth discussion with MAPC. We are on the waiting list, but they have clearly said you will also need to go get other help. So they're clearly saying we're going to give you limited help. I need to get a sense of when we're likely to get the help and what help we're likely to get it from then. So the place to get the other help was the Energy and Environmental Affairs, EEA. So that's another state agency. I looked at their grant process briefly. Interestingly enough, their grant proposals, which again, you don't even put the grant in until May, so you probably wouldn't know until July or August if you're getting it. And they are going around awarding millions of dollars. Their focus this time, or like we're most focused on building code and zoning, because they want to promote dense housing density and probably, quite frankly, smaller housing because that's less energy resources. And I totally understand that goal. It's sort of like the steps are like energy efficiency, then decarbonizing, getting off of fossil fuels, then that density that we all need so that there's less transportation costs, and then smaller housing as opposed to McMansions obviously makes sense. That's going to be a hard grant to get because it's going to require quite frankly a lot of support from the town. And my impression at the one meeting of town officials was that our building code is hard enough as it is. It's blah, 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 blah. Like, that was one person. Maybe there's more discussions to be had, but I think that's a tough grant to get. Even if we'd like to put some energy into that, even if we have the conversations with town officials. And zoning is different. I don't know. Everybody hates zoning changes if it comes near their neighborhood. But in any event, zoning is different. We are on a commuter line, and we're supposed to be having dense zoning around the commuter line, which makes all the sense in the world. You can commute back and forth to Boston, and that is a great benefit, quite frankly, of living in Stoughton, that we have that resource. So that'll be challenging, but given the challenging and given that that's no guarantee. Given my meeting with town officials, which immediately turned to you go hire a consultant as opposed to what can we do to dig in and help you get to these steps, because they're very busy. And Kathy Stanley has said they're very, very busy, very under-resourced. So they were all pointing me to getting a consultant, which means we have to get an article. The deadline is really to get a draft article to the select board by no later than the end of January, so they can decide to put it in the warrant by the first week of February. And so I'm sort of like backing up on the calendar. So I have also talked to Fran in procurement about the process, so she knows what we're thinking about, so we're all on the same page.
And that will help us come up with
she
a
clearly
budget ask.
Yes, so she clearly will put it out to bid because the numbers are going to be well over $10,000. We have sort of a general quote from somebody James was in contact with, Witten Horsley, and it was like, well, 50 for this, 50 to this, 20 for this, 20 for this. I mean, the range is close to 100 to 150. I have had a personal conversation with Kleinfelder, a couple of people there about, and I sent them as a sample the Sudbury Climate Action Plan, and it was ironic because one of them said to me, she was basically saying there's really no teeth in it, which I don't think I picked up, which is interesting that they were looking at, obviously, from an engineering perspective and very critically, and it certainly looks like a really good plan without being quite as long as Acton's plan. But it was noticeable, and I need to go back and reread it, about was it not really specific enough and the benchmark specific enough. So I think they're going to try to get us a quote. So that's two. The third person I talked to, Beta Group, very kindly called me back today, or actually had emailed with him, and he was like, and Beta has worked with the town before. They were like, we don't really do this. They were like, what, you need like, energy measurements and this and that and nets. You're like, we don't really do this. They're like, we said, we're civil engineers, we don't really do that. Okay, so maybe basically what he said is take a look at the other towns, call them up and ask them who they use. So I want to get at least one other person or firm who can give us a quote. So I'll work on that. So I can come back with look and sounding like it's going to have to be around X. And the other question is people are like, well, what do you want? We want something that can show us the roadmap based on the analysis of the greenhouse gas emissions to get on the road to net zero. And of course, we also want somebody to weigh in on the climate adaptation and that as well. Does that make sense?
And the costs.
And the costs of. Actually, I'm curious whether those other climate action plans have the costs of doing this.
I don't think they do, and I think that it's important, particularly. First of all, I think it's a selling point when you go to town meeting.
Yeah.
When we ask for this money,
right.
Rather, there's going to be objections, of course. And one of the arguments I think is that, look, it's very easy for us to come in and sell you guys, a whole pie in the sky. Do this, do that, do everything else. We understand that there are some fiscal restraints, and what a consultant will allow us to do is to give you all an honest look at what these things are going to cost, and that way, when it comes to implementing, etc., you'll be able to prioritize based on those costs, because we do understand that we don't have 225 million roughly maybe right now just to throw at the problem. So in a way, what we're saying is we're protecting you by hiring a consultant in order to be able to talk finances. And I noticed that a lot of these plans don't have them.
Right.
And I don't think that if I don't have that in front of me and I'm reading it, I'm saying, oh, this sounds great. I have no idea what it's going to cost.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw the article I sent you today.
Yes.
From the Globe, an article in Sunday's Globe about I forget what high school, a couple of schools that were going to replace some of their heating systems, and they decided to go with geothermal. They got some really nice federal as well as state grants. Really nice federal. That may not be in existence in another year from now, so I wouldn't bank on that. But aside from that, it's really eye-opening, when you do start to look at the costs, because without that, these plans all look fantastic. And then you start saying, wait a minute. I think it was $6 million just to overall cost for a geothermal in one or two schools. That's a lot of money. So if I see that, then I can at least say, okay, maybe there are grants available. And the other component to that is, all right, give it. If you can tell us what some of the costs are, can you also tell us how to defray some of those costs? For example, the same grants that these high schools got. So I'm real interested in numbers because I am so lost when it comes to how much these things cost.
But I think that that's such a good point, though, where we're only making recommendations. And then if we could kind of cost out some of those recommendations, and then ultimately it becomes a question of how much do we have to spend on, I don't mean for town meeting, for the consultant, I mean in the big picture.
Right.
And then decisions can be made about greatest impact given funds that we have, right? Then it becomes almost like we could do this for this much, this for this much. If we wanted to do everything, it would be this much, but we know that that's not necessarily feasible. So where do we want to place our greatest impact.
Or it might be feasible if
Or if
these monies
you were
are,
then to
if
offset
we're
it.
clever enough to
But
figure
you
out,
have to
right.
spell all of that
Exactly.
out, so it's a roadmap to
Right.
accomplish what you have within the means that you have. But it's seeing the whole thing, so you're not just like, okay, this year we're gonna say it's this, but then, oh wait, the next year we wanna do this, and if we had only known that the year prior, then maybe we would have made our decisions
That's right.
differently.
Hopefully a
That's
plan
what I
helps,
think the
right.
benefit of
Right.
what the climate action plan is supposed to be, is to map all of that out, provide all of that information. Again, with what Michael was saying about the offsetting too, to spell that all out.
Right. So
That's like
it.
what our remit is.
A great point, which I did not have top of mind whatsoever, is to have them weigh in on obviously estimated costs. And at the end of the day, when a plan is prepared, we are in no position to say whether in 2032 there will be an extra $1.2 million to do this to this building,
No.
because nobody knows, and we don't know what federal and state money will
Or
be
what
available.
the state of anything that's
But
gonna be
yeah,
done.
exactly, and God forbid, all
Right.
sorts of things could happen. But it's still like a roadmap of how do you get to
Options.
reducing this and preparing for this and reducing this and preparing for this, and et cetera, et cetera. But that's a very helpful comment about weighing in on costs. If anybody has any ideas from reading the plans about what I should say to the potential consultants, just please send me an email. That would be helpful, because again, my conversation with Kleinfeld, they were like, "What do you want?"
Right.
And I was trying to articulate it, but I haven't done a climate action plan
Right.
before. I've
I
certainly
want a consultant to tell me what I need from a
Yeah,
consultant.
yeah. You don't know what you don't know.
But it's better, of course, if we tell them,
Right.
and yet they can weigh in and say,
So
well,
really, practically, what we're asking for is like some sort of data, some sort of like pointers to like how do we get this done if we want to do this. So like she said again, so if we do have a plan to meet this goal by say 2 years, what is the feasibility study, the cost, the applicability of this cost to the society or to the community where we're actually living in? If we get the grants, how much grants are we looking at to actually get? So let's take for instance,
What are the grants actually
Yeah.
giving us? Because it's probably not for the actual, some
Yeah.
of them are specific enough that they're
Specific, yeah.
more about the help to,
for children,
for the plan
Yeah.
rather than the execution of
Yeah.
it, right? And that's where we have to be careful, because the grants aren't necessarily gonna
For the
all pay for
projects.
the work to be done. A lot of the grants are supportive grants
Exactly.
to help you get closer to figuring out what you need to do.
So there you go, Molly.
Thank
That's
you.
what you need to ask.
I do think we have it's a two-pronged thing. Part of it is, what do we want from a consultant, but the other part is how do we sell this idea to town meeting?
Yeah.
When you saw the pushback just in regard to creating an expense-free committee, you can imagine when we go in there, and 100,000 isn't a whole lot. We wanted 60,000 to look at a barn. But and that
that's
went
true.
50-50.
That's
So and that's the sort of thing that people get bollocks up on.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
We throw millions around a town meeting without anybody taking a second look at things. But when it comes to a $15,000, we'll spend it there goes Thursday night. So I expect to see that.
Oh,
So I
no
really want to go in
question.
there
No, we need to
well
think about-
armed and
yes.
and
to make a
thoughtful
very
about
convincing.
that.
And
Yes.
this is not this. We don't even want this money, but it's in your best
It's-
interest
exactly.
to spend
This
it.
is
Yes.
what Molly and I were
Right.
talking about the same thing
Okay.
earlier today.
Right.
One question.
Yes.
Within those plans that we've looked at from the town, I understand most of them don't have costs associated with it, but do they have the consultancy acknowledged that worked on those plans?
Some of them do,
Like
and
in
some
a
of them
book?
don't. And
Because
I
that
need.
might be another way of creating the short list of consultants
Yes,
that you
no,
want to
that's exactly what
Okay.
the consultant who I did talk to today. He said, "You go. He said,
Look
I
at the
can't tell you who to go
footnotes.
to.
Yeah.
You go to the town and
Okay.
you ask them." So again,
But it might
I'll-
even be within the report.
It was with just one or two, but other
Okay.
ones I couldn't find it. But in
Okay.
any event, actually, I just found the document that shows you the EEA planning assistance grants. So this is the most recent statement from them. Priorities for program spending include zoning for sustainable housing production, including to address, etc. I don't even know what they're, accessory dwelling units,
Okay.
things of that nature, which was a huge article in the Globe about how California is like just opening up the door to all those things so you could have smaller housing where you need it to fit people's needs. Mitigation through regulations that reduce energy use and greenhouse gas emissions via a better mix of land uses, more compact growth, enhanced design, and zoning that results in permanent land conservation. So this goes right into the Conservation Commission. So it's not like I'm saying we can't possibly get this, but getting into grant is tough.
Specific.
But we would have to really say that amongst the things we want your help planning for, and maybe they'll say, hey, Stoughton is on that train line. They've been. I think we've been compliant so far with what we were supposed to be doing. We haven't thrown up a lot of obstacles. But maybe we say, we're opening the door to being more compliant. And I just wanted to mention, I had the piece of paper, but I don't have the piece of paper. With respect to what has been done by our energy manager, who's been around for about 3 years, our energy manager consultant, Kathy Stanley, she's brought in $1 million. So in other words, there's a report that I had, and it was multiple towns, but it was the Green Communities Grant report. So she gets Green Communities grants. So it'll be this year, $250,000. It'll be specifically upgrade the such and such at this school, do this at this place, do this at this place, and then the next year, $200,000, specifically how it was spent. And again, she knows exactly how to manage grants, how to get grants, how to spend grants, how to report back on grants. So as far as I know, I'm sure not everything, but almost everything she's done, Green Communities grants have paid for it for the town. There's obviously a lot of grants, and will continue. I think there will continue to be a lot of grants in there, at least on the state level. And the more we're sort of positioned, because we have a plan to take those grants. And just finally on sort of having a plan, there was another federal grant that I got notice of. I sent it to Kathy Stanley. I sent it to Pam McCarthy, and town planner. Kathy Stanley asked me to read it and tell her whether it could possibly apply to Stoughton, which was interesting. And it was actually about disadvantaged communities and helping them prepare for adaptation. And it had something you needed to have a pre-existing either 501c3 or a committee like us to even qualify for applying for this federal grant.
Oh, wow.
So both me and Pam digging into it thought that it seems like extremely unlikely. We're not very much a targeted community because we're not really that poor, and we're not indigenous, and we're not on the coastline or something. But it was interesting to see that is actually a something in your favor to qualify for grants, that you have a committee like us and the sustainability committee. So that's that's good to know for future purposes, that we're putting ourselves in a better position, in a town in a better position to be able to get these grants. Although quite frankly, there's so many grants and they're so time consuming, it's literally hard for the town to keep up with the flow and to maybe take advantage of what it can achieve through those. So now I've just misplaced my agenda, but I'm sure I can find it. Is this it? Okay, thank you. Any other questions about the article at this point, which we'll work on that. We'll work on the consultants, we'll work on the article. Community survey, Rachel's not here to tell us the latest with the results. However, I have sent it to the superintendent. I have sent it to the library and the YMCA for permission. I have asked James to have photocopies made, and I have asked Janet to help distribute the flyers. So hopefully it'll start getting seen more around town. And you missed it when we actually formally voted to adopt the logo. I don't know if you've seen the beautiful logo.
No, I didn't
you haven't
see
seen
the
beautiful
logo.
logo. I don't have it with me, but we'll make sure you see it. But it's really nice and eye-catching. And for whatever events we have too, of course, we can have a logo on the event. So we did vote to, it was created by Luke from SMAC, who,
Excellent.
very grateful to him for that. school engagement and toolkit. We are working on having discussions with various administrators at the schools. And also, I believe I forwarded to everybody on the committee, there is a nonprofit which created a toolkit, and there was a link to suggested, again, I would say, like a resolution or something for the school committee to adopt, which talks about climate change. And I read that, and we can talk about it with the schools. It's also interesting, even for me, who used to be on school committee, to figure out like where the lines are drawn. Like there's the town and there's the schools. Now, clearly, the energy manager is working for the schools as well. I mean, if not more, she's working on school buildings because they are such an energy drain and outdated and everything. But I think like our climate action plan isn't like gonna draw a line and say, oh, well, those are your buildings, we're not concerned with them. I mean, it's all part of the town. We obviously have to respect their jurisdiction and the school committees and the superintendent's authority, but I think that, you know, it is part of the whole community approach that hopefully the schools will engage with it. Next on community engagement, I do feel like we need to plan something for January, February, and I think it would be great if people come up with names of community groups that we would make sure we would get a message, a flyer, whatever to them about community engagement. So that includes churches, any kind of clubs, the high school, things of that nature. If people actually just, I know you said you're in Rotary Club, is that correct? Mm-hmm. And then there's got the Lions Club, and there's the Portuguese Club, there's YMCA, of course, various and sundry things. There's probably other community groups that I don't know about, but it would be great if people sort of come armed with names, and then we can talk about the community engagement.
And that's just community engagement on awareness, or what's the specific engagement?
I think the specific would be, having a public meeting to talk about who we are, what we're doing, and what our potential interim recommendations are. You know, get some feedback. I would love for somebody who has run a focus group to help out. And actually I might ask some people to help out. So when I went to the Neponset Valley Watershed Association little focus group thing, I was just kind of watching how they did it. That was helpful, but I think that's going to take a lot of brainstorming and a lot of outreach to see if people will come, but also just like a lot of brainstorming. I think part of it is saying, here's what we are, here's what our mission is. I think also, to the extent we get people to show up, a few little flyers on little action steps they can take, the composting, to this, to that. So people who are really wanting to do something right now, not just talk about it, that would be great. But certainly will be willing to engage with anybody who would like help to run the focus group. All right. Anything else that we should be talking about? That anything that has arisen since the agenda went out, which I want to give myself a pat on the back that I noticed the fact that there was both Thanksgiving and the holiday after to get your agenda out. The 48 hours. That's because I was on school committee and sometimes we messed up.
Well, you've learned.
Yes,
very well.
Hopefully.
Thank you for managing that.
Okay, well, it was, hopefully that will not be an issue going forward. So our meetings, and I don't have the calendar in front of me, or I meant to bring that. We will meet 2 weeks from today, which will be December 4th. And then.
2 weeks is not December 4th.
No, it's not.
No, that's next
1 week.
Okay, so we're meeting December 11th. Then it's like Christmas, right? So we're not meeting then. So then we're going to be meeting
January.
The first, like in January, what would be like 7th or 8th?
Yeah, it's going to be the 8th.
Yes. So hopefully people will get those dates on their calendars. And we will hopefully really dig into, we're going to dig into the article, quite frankly, in December.
Good.
And because we will have to do that. I would definitely be voting on the article or proposed article, subject to maybe any edits by town council by that first meeting in January. So
who's drafting the article?
I guess that's me.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess that's
Us.
me. Yeah, I'll talk with all of you, obviously. But again, so Steve Cady said that he'd take a look at it, and town council would take a look at it. But I don't think there's going to be any issue with getting it in the warrant. I guess we want it to be appropriately worded so that people, when they see it in the warrant in the spring, will be open-minded about it and will hear us out as to where we're at and why we need this to actually successfully put together a plan that's meaningful. Anything else, or if somebody wants to make a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we are adjourned.
Great.
We on a